We're going to start the show today by having a hard look at what is happening and what is going to happen to jobs in the United States. You're hearing a lot of silly stories about why employment is getting harder and harder to obtain. Indeed, you're hearing even more absurd stories about why unemployment is getting less and less. Soon they will have to stop lying about all this and fess up to the truth because it will simply become too obvious. Anyone who pays attention knows that something unusual is happening to employment. Good, full-time jobs are disappearing, being replaced by lower-paying and part-time jobs. Experts, and especially politicians, have explanations and excuses. Offshoring to lower labour countries, excessive rules and regulations, illegal aliens, lack of education in the workforce. The list goes on and on. What I really hear, automation. When most people hear automation, they think robots. Most robots are dedicated and expensive and don't replace that many people. Automation or computer control is what gets the majority of the jobs, and it's not all that obvious. Email is a great example. Almost everyone uses email. Before email, there was snail mail. Every month, people sent you bills, magazines, catalogues, flyers, etc., and a guy in a truck came around once a day and stuffed your mailbox full. You wrote checks, put them in envelopes, added stamps, and put them back in the UPS system to go back to your vendors. Today, I get an average of 2 pieces of mail a month. Excuse me. Mostly flyers that go to everyone in the neighbourhood. I can't remember the last piece of first-class mail I received. The USPS has half the employees it had a few years ago, and its business is basically a package delivery service and deliverer of junk mail. However, it's not just the loss of direct jobs. The USPS uses a lot less gas, trucks, tyres, equipment, power, etc. All that reduction filters down to other vendors that supply the USPS. The USPS has lost about 200,000 nicely paid employees since its peak. Since the losses were scattered over the total US and over time, it wasn't really all that noticeable. If some US company laid off 200,000 people at once, the uproar would be tremendous. Even less noticed are the other people affected. People no longer buy envelopes because they don't use them anymore. The amount of paper used in correspondence has dropped. Workers in forestry, paper mills, trucking, etc. all take a hit. In addition, 200,000 or more people that would have good-paying jobs don't have a job with the USPS and have to find something else to do. It's not just the USPS. Look at banking. It wasn't all that long ago that you got paid, went to a bank, made a deposit, got some cash, and went home and wrote out checks to pay bills. Today, your salary is directly deposited, you get cash from an ATM, and pay bills online. You have little need ever to go inside a bank, and branch banking is taking a hit. All those people that worked in a branch bank that got closed are unemployed. Again, the loss is not all that apparent. A few people here, a few people there, but it all adds up. This goes on all throughout the economy. Accountants are being replaced by online tax services. Lawyers are being replaced by automated discovery systems. Kindle and Amazon came along and killed the bookstores. With a Kindle, you can buy a book online at 3 a.m. in minutes and never talk to a human. The people working in forestry, in paper mills, in print shops that printed the books, in warehouses and distribution centres, in trucking and in bookstores that sold the books, all took a hit. There's a processing plant in California that makes 7.5 tons of guacamole an hour. It's run by a computer and has one person that oversees the operation. Guacamole is ultra simple to make, but it's much cheaper to buy than to pay someone at a restaurant to make it. So, the person that made it on site is now gone. Most of the food that is served in restaurants today has some kind of pre-processing. Steaks are cut, trimmed and proportioned and come in boxes. Potatoes are baked off-site and just warmed in restaurants. Salads are pre-packaged in a facility and delivered ready to serve. If you go to a place with a salad bar, all that stuff comes in pre-packaged. The employees just put it in the bins. At one point in time, if you were hungry, you could go wash dishes for a meal. Today, a machine washes the dishes and there are no human dishwashers. You may find a small restaurant that has a human dishwasher, but they are disappearing as equipment gets cheaper and labour gets more expensive. 4,100,000 people make their living driving in the United States. Driverless cars, trucks and buses are not coming, they're already hitting the streets today. Within a decade, probably 50% of the driving jobs will disappear. That's a lot of good paying jobs gone. People say all the time, "I'm not worried, they'll never automate my job." But that's not the point. Everyone with a job depends on customers with money to make their paycheck. If the customers don't have money, eventually you'll be out of a job as well. The people that had bookstores didn't do anything wrong, but the Kindle and Amazon ran them out of business. The problem with automation is that it's so flexible and it evolves so quickly that there's no one place where you can control it. If you had a factory somewhere that was causing such job loss, you could go and weld the doors shut and stop the carnage. But automation is everywhere. It's affecting everything, and it's growing. 15 years ago, when most home computer modems were dial-up, if you'd told people how important computers were going to be today, they wouldn't have believed you. They had no way to imagine the power of smartphones, Netflix, Amazon, Facebook, etc. They certainly wouldn't have believed that driverless cars would be on the road and working. A large percentage of people today still don't. Predicting what will happen in the future is useless, other than to say that automation will continue to take human jobs. Today, it's technically possible to automate a fast food restaurant completely, and it'll happen sooner than we think. When you consider how many fast food places there are in the US and how many people they employ, the numbers are huge. So, a few days ago I talked about automation as being the real jobs killer of the future as opposed to robotics. I'd like to add a little more to that discussion. Earlier this year, Citi Global Perspectives and Solutions came out with a report on what computerization and automation in the US will do to jobs. It built on a study that Oxford University had produced in 2013. By looking at 702 detailed occupations, it found that about 47% of all jobs would disappear over the next 10 to 15 years. There are certain things that you have to understand. About 53% of the jobs will not disappear, and no job on the list will disappear totally. Some jobs will lose a lot of people, some jobs almost no people, which makes good logical sense. For example, furriers, that's people who shoe horses, are still in demand. Not nearly as many as 100 years ago, but there's still a need for furriers. When companies look at automation, they use a simple formula. You take the initial cost, add in interest to borrow the money, add in the cost of maintenance, and divide by the number of hours of useful life. That gives you a cost per hour. Then you look at the cost of a human, or humans, per hour to do the same job with all the perks, and then you compare the two numbers. The lower number wins. The calculation varies due to a lot of factors. If you have an enormous bank that fields thousands of phone calls per hour 24/7, the amount of money you can invest and save with an automated voice system is a lot different from a small company with 7 employees, which is open 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and receives 20 phone calls a day, and which may not automate their phone system. The problem comes in the mid-sized companies. Suppose you have a mid-sized company and run the calculation and the numbers come up equal. You'll probably do nothing. But you can expect automation to get cheaper and labor costs to increase, so at some point automation makes financial sense. About 15 years ago, a basic home computer system cost around $600 to $1,000. Today, you can buy a basic system for half that amount, but instead of an 80-gig hard drive, it comes with a 1 terabyte hard drive. The CPU is 5 times faster and has 4 times the memory. In another 15 years, who knows? I expect that in 15 years you will not be able to buy a desktop as we know it today. Already sales of desktops are dropping like a rock, losing out to tablets, smartphones, etc. The social implications of this are awesome to contemplate. Suppose I have a company with 10 people and automate them out of a job. They're gone and no longer my problem. But the government now has 10 unemployed people to deal with. If they don't find another job, they are now wards of the state. The government cannot just box those 10 people up and ship them off somewhere. Companies are going to keep automating whenever the numbers work in automation's favor. The engineers of the world are going to keep coming up with new automation products to replace people. The price of automation will keep dropping. The politicians keep saying they will create jobs and grow the economy, but it's unclear whether they're talking about human jobs or automated jobs. Ask yourselves what's going to happen when there are no jobs for a large portion of humans, and how that's going to work. I'm sure that somewhere some very smart people are looking at this problem, but I don't see any evidence that this is happening. Maybe they just don't have a solution. I've read articles where some dreamer is saying that people will only work 20 hours a week and have all that free time for hobbies, education, etc. If people are having trouble making ends meet working 40 hours a week, it's difficult to see how they'll manage on 20 hours a week. I've also seen a basic income scheme floated where everyone gets a monthly check. I'm all for free money, but nobody talks about where that money is going to come from. Certainly not from those people working 20 hours a week. Technically, I can't think of any job that can be automated, or rather that can't be automated eventually. provided you're willing to invest enough money into the project. The thing that keeps humans employed today is not that automation can't do their job. It's that humans can do it more cheaply. With the falling price of automation, that may not last much longer.